Hello everyone, this is Patrick, your host of the Art of Bourbon, and this week I came up with an interesting idea for our segment. This week we're going to look and play with the art of bitters in an old-fashioned cocktail. I'll refer back to our video that we did last week where we actually did making of an old-fashioned, and I followed that recipe pretty exact except for the addition of bitters. So what we're going to do this week, and I've never tried this before, so this is just brand new to me too, is we're going to try a little bit of a play on the idea of what adding bitters to a standard base mix will do. And for this base mix, we're going to use Buffalo Trace this week. Buffalo Trace is pretty widely available, and I'll take the moment real quick to say I'm not sponsored or affiliated or anything with any of the companies that I use in this video or talk about. This is just my natural impression, so feel free to use those as you will. Buffalo Trace is a pretty affordable whiskey. It's one I like to use for mixes. It tends to be about $30 or so, most places, $35. And you can find that pretty easily places. And it's pretty low. It's like a 90 proof, I believe, on here. Let's take a look at what it says on the whiskey bottle. 45% alcohol, which equates to 90 proof. So right on there. So we're going to use Buffalo Trace this week. For our experimentation, we're going to use my favorite orange bitters. This is Regan Orange Bitters. Regan's Orange Bitters number 6. We're going to use one by Dashfire that I really like called Old Fashioned Bitters, oddly enough. And we're going to use one that I've kind of found recently, and I like to add it because it adds some smoky nuances sometimes, Black Walnut Bitters. We're going to play with those. So what I have here is my Old Fashioned mix. And if we recall correctly, my Old Fashioned mix, I'm making this for a small crowd, so this is a half batch. It's going to be 4 ounces of bourbon, about 0.6 ounces of simple syrup. Usually I would start adding the bitters at this point. For a half batch, I'm going to add 4 shots of bitters. So what we're going to do is add 4 shots of bitters in here in place of that. So we're going to do one with no bitters at all. We're going to do this one with one dash of bitters, 1 dash of bitters, and 1 dash of bitters to kind of see what it does and if I can pick up any differences. I'm thinking ahead before I do this, scientifically speaking, that we're going to see a little bit of differences. I tend to prefer orange bitters, but sometimes I like orange bitters blended with other things because this tends to make it a little bit more full-bodied and a little bit citrusy. It's nice. The old-fashioned bitters are a little bit different. They add more baking spice notes and more depth to the flavor, I find, in an old-fashioned. Black walnut bitters are a little bit of a wild card. They add a little bit of a smoky essence in addition to more full-bodied of other dark spices like cardamom and such. So we're going to see how that goes because I think this is kind of a fun idea for a video. So I have the mix already done in here. I'm going to add the ice to it, and we're going to shake it up and give it a shot and see what we think. This is kind of fun. If you remember on my last video, I called this the dirty method, or kind of the caveman method of making an old-fashioned. A lot of people like to stir it in a stirring mixed pitcher, and it's really not a bad thing to do. But I find that this really incorporates the flavors well, settles it down. The caveman method works really good. So I'm going to pour a little bit in each one of these. Look at this beautiful old-fashioned footage. So it pours, like I say, when I use the caveman method, it pours a little bit milky so you can't see through it. But the bubbles subside fairly fast. Get a little bit more in here, so let's make sure we get the proportions pretty close to where I want them to be. I could have done this ahead of time, but I wanted to make sure that the ice didn't melt too much to really change the flavor of this. As the ice melts, what it does is it dilutes the proof and makes it, sometimes it makes it a little bit easier for people that aren't used to the harsher notes of whiskey to drink. But I find in a cocktail it tends to water it down a little bit. That's not something I'm looking for. So this is going to be our control. This is going to have no bitters at all. This just has the bourbon in it, which is Buffalo Trace. It has our simple sugar in it, and a little bit of cherry juice. Also, these all have that too, but now we're going to play around a little bit. This one here is going to have a dash, a little squeezy today, going to have a dash of Regan's number 6. I'll put that right here. This one here is going to have a dash. The one thing I like about some of these Dashfire ones is they come out with a little thing. You can pull it out like this and just squirt it in, so you could get a real precise measurement on that. I kind of like that versus some of the bottles. And I'll show up a close-up of these bottles later. And this one is the Black Walnut bitters, and I smell it already. It smells like a very smoky, like a black walnut kind of deal going on. A couple drops of that into there. Swirl these around a little bit to mix them. So let's have some taste and see what we think about that. I'm going to put these a little further back here. There we go. So this is the one that is plain, old-fashioned mix, no bitters. It's almost like a cocktail at a bar in a way. It's got a little sweetness to it. Buffalo Trace is not too proofy, so it goes very smooth. With the addition of the simple sugar and the cherry juice, it goes down almost like a smooth cocktail. It doesn't have a lot of range in the palate at all. I get a little bit of vanilla going on and a little hint of baking spice, but not very much going on. It has a nice smooth finish. It's a very approachable and drinkable cocktail without any bitters. But what it's missing is like a depth or a body. And that's kind of why people add bitters to things, is they give it a bit of depth. This one is the Regan's Orange. I can smell a little bit of orange in there right now. The Regan's Orange does add some nuances to this. There definitely is more body going on. There are some citrus notes that I like. There's vanilla in there. It pulls out a little bit of like a, I'm not sure which baking spice that is, but it does pull out some baking spices. There's more going on in the finish and in the palate. There's just a little bit more intensity with it as well. It's still a very smooth cocktail, being it's only 90 proof. With the addition of the sugars that we have in there with the simple syrup and the cherry juice, the filthy cherry juice, but it's very nice. Let's try this with the Old Fashioned bitters. I'm really curious to see what this one does, because I've never done a tasting like this where I've compared them head to head like this. Sometimes we'll do like a batch for an evening. We'll start off with orange, and then we'll like taste one of our whiskeys and go, this one would really do with this. We taste the whiskeys neat beforehand a lot of times to decide what we want to do with them. So, Old Fashioned bitters. Let's try this one out. Wow. That doesn't have any citrus notes with it, but it really doubles down on the baking spice notes. What I mean by baking spices, I'm getting a little bit of like cinnamon notes in there, a little cardamom, a little allspice kind of stuff going on. This is like some of the stuff that kind of reminds you of like Thanksgiving when pies are being baked and such. There's definitely a lot more full body to this one. I would go with like, this is like 20% body. This is like 40% body, some stuff going on that's interesting. This is like a 60 or 70% body. This thing has a lot going on. I really like that one quite a bit. Let's try this one. This is the Black Walnut bitters only. Typically, I mix the Black Walnut bitters in with other things. So if I'm doing a partial, like I say, a half load of these cocktails where I would do 4 dashes of bitters, I would often do maybe 2 Regan's Orange, 2 Black Walnut, 3, 1. I would play with it a little bit. I've never been on one straight, so this will be kind of fun. That's a different beast entirely. There's almost an astringent kick to it. I get a bit of the smoky notes, and like the walnut's really strong. I'm not getting baking spices near as much, and I'm not getting a full mouthfeel like I expected I would get. It definitely adds characters and notes to it, but I wouldn't say it adds the whole package. So I'm going to stand by my original conclusion of how I've been using Black Walnut bitters. Is it's a good one to mix in like a 1 or a 2 dash with something else as your mainstay. It's like a note. If you wanted to make a Old Fashioned that had some more complexities to it, a little bit more interesting, I would go with maybe like 3 Regans, 1 Black Walnut to add a little note to it. Maybe some Old Fashioned and a Black Walnut, something like that. But I don't know if I would go Black Walnut on its own. It's certainly not a bad cocktail, but it definitely is a lot more bitter and astringent on the tongue than I would like. So that's kind of interesting. Why don't we take a step further? So right now, my personal taste is almost a tie between Regan's Orange and Old Fashioned bitters. It depends more on my mood. If I want a little bit more of just kind of relaxed drinking, a little bit of citrus notes in there, a little orangey kind of taste to it, but not too full bodied, I would go with this. This is my mainstay most of the time anyway. Or I find a bourbon or a whiskey that you use that's almost too smooth in a way or doesn't have a lot of character, I kick it up with this a lot of times, and it really brings out the spices of that bourbon. But I want to try a little experiment where I take a little bit of a black walnut and touch it just a little bit into the old fashioned and a little bit into here to kind of just see what happens if I try to mix it a little bit. Now the problem with this is it's getting maybe a little heavy on the bitters for these 2 glasses. Let's just find out what it does. So this is mostly Regan's orange with some black walnut. That really changed things up a lot. So what it does is it's got the smooth components of the Regan's orange. So you get a little bit of the orange notes in there, a little citrus, a little bit of body. But what changes it up by adding the black walnut is you get like that astringent side where it kicks into like the dark walnut a little bit of smoke. It's still missing the mid-range body that I expected it to have. Let's try this Dashfire Old Fashioned with the black walnut bitters. That's nice too, actually. So what this does is this adds a lot of the baking spices, and you get a little bit of the smoky walnut notes with the baking spices. It's pretty full on the palate. I'd say if I had to pick a combination that we've done tonight that is my favorite, it's going to be Regan's Orange Bitters Straight, followed by the Old Fashioned Bitters, and then I'm going to go the same way with the addition of the black walnut to each one, and then black walnut by itself last. If you have someone who's very new to whiskey, that doesn't like the bitter kicks of whiskey, without bitters is certainly interesting, but it's a little flat as far as how it drinks. It almost drinks like a kind of a cocktail maybe, or something like that you get at a bar that's just really smooth, fast, and like there's not a lot of body or depth to it. It's just like you sip on it and it's kind of gone. It tastes good, and while you sip on it, it's a little sweet, smooth, good to go. But certainly adding bitters to these adds a lot more body nuances to it, and I think it's a lot better. So that's kind of what I did today. I played with these a little bit, and I hope you enjoyed our little experimentation and our journey on the Art of Bourbon tonight. A lot of fun. So I hope you join me next week. We're going to go over some comparisons of Blanton's versus Good Times, and I might have some Mystery Heaven Hill in our next video. So you'll have to check it out then. Thanks for joining me, Patrick, on your host of the Art of Bourbon. Look forward to seeing you next time. Do not forget to hit that like button. I need those likes so I can continue doing these. And I hope you like my content. If you have some ideas, please post them below. I'd love to interact with you and take your ideas and use those to run forward with some things. If maybe you've got some ideas for bitters that I haven't tried before too, I'd love to talk to you about that too. So until next time, see you guys there. Please drink responsibly, and I'll see you then.